Hey, what's up? Liron here. Today I'm going to show you how to get a quick win in watercolor using this scene. There's a lot of things that work in your favor, so I hope you'll enjoy this, and let's get to it. So I'm going to get started with the drawing. I do want to share a few notes. The reason why I think this is a really good scene and the very forgiving one is that the major shapes are fairly simple. And the shape itself is organic, and this organic feel to it and structure allow you to change quite a bit and still get it right. The one thing I want you to focus on is the large shapes. And what are those? The sky, the white area where the snow is, and then the shadows and the rocks. So there are essentially three parts to this painting, and look at how much emphasis I'm putting on drawing these parts. Okay, you have that left top section that's a little darker, then you have the big blue shadow on the right casting on the mountain itself with very clear edges as it's a cast shadow, and you want to get these shapes in. Now, some areas may be confusing. You see there's a gradual transition from kind of light snow to dark cliffs and then really dark rocks. Yes, that is true, but try and get the main shapes in. Pause the video if you have to. I ran the drawing stage double speed, so go back to it if you want to, but generally speaking, it's all about these major shapes. Here I am indicating that gradual transition, all of that. Colors are ultramarine blue and manganese blue hue for the sky. And my goal here is to get that big shape, the first one out of the three that I mentioned, okay? Now, make sure to cut around the areas that are white, the snow, but you will see me connecting the sky's wash onto the shadow on the mountain or cliff itself. Now, one important thing to note at this stage, mix enough paint. I mixed more than I thought is necessary, and I ended up needing a little more. If you want to get a smooth, beautiful wash that really has great flow to it, you must, and I mean you must, mix enough water. If you start mixing while you're painting, it's going to slow things down. Now, I'm experienced, so I'm able to do that, but I don't recommend it. If you can avoid it as much as possible, that'll be preferable. Now, one more note, there is a little more manganese blue hue in this mix than French ultramarine. It's just the colors are a little off, so you don't see them as cleanly, okay? But I tried going for a bit of a cooler feeling, not warm like French ultramarine. Now, look at how I'm working the background into the areas that are in the shadow and are connected to it. It's like I'm painting everything but the snow in a way, right? Now, you don't have to do this, but I recommend it because it's relatively simple shapes, so why not connect them at this opportunity? Sometimes it's very complex and trying to avoid the highlights and painting everything as one connected wash. This isn't one of those instances. It's relatively simple, so I would recommend you connect them, okay? Other areas where there is a connection, maybe avoid if it's too hard for you to concentrate while doing that, or anything like that. Here I am getting those very rough transitions from snow to dark just by using the side of my brush with very little water and just a little bit of paint. The way you do this is just from this situation, you clean the brush on the paper towel, and whatever bit of a light dry brush there is there, you use to get some texture there for the cliffs, right? Now, this will connect also to a shadow on the left side. We're not done with the sky wash, so here I am connecting that to the shadow on the mountain side. To the left. Again, that connects to those dry brush marks I put earlier. A lot of these shapes are open for interpretation. You don't have to get them 100% accurately. You don't have to worry about the small details looking the same. The only thing that matters are the main shapes we talked about. Sky, white snow, and shadows and rocks. That's it. And if you take a few steps back, you squint, you'll see that I got all of these shapes together, merged really nicely, and it works out as a pattern. It works out well. You can recreate my pattern to the T and get it to look just the same. I will try to include also a good quality picture of the drawing stage if you feel like you just want to trace it over the way I did it, okay? So now just a few finishing touches for this first wash that's going to establish a lot here, right? And now we move on to the next. Now you'll see me mixing a lot of grays and kind of muted colors. The way I do this is the same blues from earlier, a lot of French ultramarine here, actually a bit more than manganese blue hue, but I'm also adding Parylene red and Indian yellow. And that's how I alternate between the brown and the muted blue and maybe a little bit of a greenish tone to it. So that's how I'm doing it, at least. Now, I zoomed in a bit because I want you to see some of the details in the mountaintop. The quality is okay, it's not the best, but that's fine. We'll zoom out in a few seconds too. But I want to show you, start small, just like I showed you in a recent live stream. Start with small shapes, very controllable, things that you can have good control over. So that you don't open up too big of a shape and then you're having a hard time keeping up with it and worrying that the paint's gonna dry and then you don't have time for wet and wet. All of that is nonsense. Start small. You don't have to open up a big shape. The first wash we had good clarity of what we're gonna do, but here it's a little more rendering small details, so you want to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Okay. Now you'll notice how the shadows and details on the right side are a little more blue. I actually should have pushed them to be more blue. That's where I kind of messed up. It's not blue enough, okay? But that's the only real comment I have in terms of where I got the temperature not as good. The values are on point though, and that's what matters really. Now, notice how I'm starting with dark. You see that tip, that edge, there's a lot of exposed rocks in it. So I'm starting with dark, and then look at what I'm doing here. I'm bringing in a bluer mix to that and connecting. And that's how you get these beautiful blurry transitions. You can put on dark and then touch it with light, or you can do wet and wet, and you'll see me do that too now. I'm putting in that blue as a backdrop, and then on that I'm going to put in some wet and wet with very dark wash. Remember, you want to counter the wetness on paper, you have to use fairly thick paint, and timing is also really important, so it may even be too early to do that, so the paint will disperse a bit. Ideally, you'd wait maybe 30 more seconds, something like that, maybe even a minute, depending on your climate. But you'll notice there is quite a great difference in temperature. And again, the camera kind of skews things a bit, so my apologies about that. It's much less warmer than it appears. It's actually a lot cooler. But still not enough blue. I could have pushed the blue much more and had this beautiful effect of even stronger snowy effect. Now here you see this, there's a little thin slice there I'm leaving as a kind of a lighter. This is where the side of the mountain kind of meets the sun a bit, so you see a bit of that snow still light. So I left that little slice over there, right? But the edge of the shape is where you want to take some extra care. And make sure you get that wavy, beautiful wavy shape you see at the edge of that cast shadow. Now you'll see me starting to work more neutralized, and that mainly means adding more yellow, because right now I have this purplish blue, so adding more yellow will neutralize it more, because a lot of the rocks on the top left section are indeed a little more warm. I know it's surprising, but compared to and in the context of the entire scene, they're actually a little warmer. Okay, now the one more reason why I think this scene is very forgiving is this stage. All of these small details, you don't have to stress about anything. Use a tiny brush if you have to. Take your time. Don't worry about getting everything in the right spot. The pattern, if it reads well from afar, that's all that you need. Okay, and this is why it's very forgiving. All of these small little shapes, you can put them in wherever you want. You don't have to worry too much about them. The pattern of light and shadow is very clear. That's the most important part. It's very clear. We have this big cast shadow, big rocks, sky, snow. That's it. I want you to look for scenes and subjects that have few simple shapes. That's the key. Now here I am doing some wet and wet, maybe more in the right timing, and you'll see that this really will stick once everything is dry. And this indicates in some places where the rocks are exposed, again, where the snow wasn't able to settle. And again, I should have pushed it a little more blue, and that would really indicate that it's snow, but you will see the final scan at the end of the process, and it's a little bluer, as I mentioned. Now the rocks on the left are really gray and even warm compared to the rest of the scene, so I'm trying to find that balance. Now again, value, color, these are all contextual. It depends on what's surrounding them. Now in this kind of a scene where everything is blue, these rocks may seem even a little warm. So I added just a touch bit more of yellow to neutralize the mix, okay? One thing I want you to always have in mind is our brains are funny. They fool us. You look at this scene and you'll see all sorts of optical illusions that makes you think that something is blue when it's not, that something is cool or warmer when it's actually not. You'll have to learn with time to see beyond that. Don't stress over it. It's something that takes time and experience, but you will be able to, with time, see beyond that and get the color matching to work, right? Now, I'm not even putting that big of an emphasis here on color matching. I'm not overthinking it at all, which is why I got some of them wrong, because it's not as important. But I actually have to say I was pretty close, so it's not totally far off. Now, this is the heart and soul of the process. You have to render these shapes. Take your time. Try and see how you can simplify them, how you can create them, but don't overthink it. Don't overthink every small shape you make and think that it's going to mess up the entire thing. You have no idea how many shapes here I did not get as well as I want to, but I'm not stressing over the details. Remember, all of these details can be moved around. What matters is the thing we're already done with, the major shapes, okay? We've already established where they are. We already know where we place them. That's all you really need, okay? Now I'm going to go back with some dry brush and keep adding a few details. And I have to apologize because the camera didn't record for a few seconds, so some of the dry brush details I added were lost. But it's the same thing I'm doing right now. I just did it the same thing. I'm looking at different areas and thinking, and also squinting and looking at my painting and thinking, where would I want to add more details, slightly darker details? Now, you want to ask yourself these questions because you're directing the focal point, you're directing the viewer to really know where to look, right? And if some area feels too empty for you, put some more details in it. And this is really where you break off from the reference and you don't just stare at that and try to mimic it. That's one big weakness that a lot of people face, including myself in the beginning. Now I'm a little over it, where you feel like you have to stick to what you see in the reference photo because you're too scared to break away from that. Don't be scared to break away from that. It's actually a big part of painting. At some point, you can stop looking at the reference and have the painting tell you what it wants, quote unquote, what it needs. Does it need more details in the shadow like I'm adding now? Does it need more detail around? And does it need the sky to be darker? Yes, it does, which is why in the next wash, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm mixing a bit of ultramarine blue and manganese blue hue. This time, the manganese blue hue is a little more dominant, and it's a thin wash. It's not too dark. My goal is just to coat it to achieve a couple of things. First, get the sky bluer. You see they're a little bluer in the reference photo, a little less purple ultramarine, and also to enhance the contrast with the snow. The snow right now doesn't pop enough, so I'm just going to go over it with a thin glaze and make it pop more, okay? And you'll see how well this is going to work. A very small action you can take to improve that effect. Don't be scared to continue and fix things. Even after you remove the tape, you can tape the painting back and make improvements, even if it's been a year and there's, oh, I see this painting I did a while ago and now I see a lot of things I would have fixed in it. Go for it. You know, the painting never really stops. I know people talk about overwork and that fear. What I see is a lot of people also being scared to actually do the work and take the painting till the end, to the end of the process. So don't be afraid to do that, right? This move that I did right now greatly enhanced it. If I was too scared, it would be just a shame. I wouldn't get it. So I signed it. I'm removing the tape. And in just 1 second, you're going to see a high quality, beautiful scan of it that really shows off the details. And I'm super proud of this one. Very happy with it. So here we go. The entire thing. And you can see the color nuance much, much better. Now I'm going to show you a bit of a zoom in and we can wrap it up. So thank you so much once again. I really appreciate you watching and hopefully this works for you. If you're a beginner, if you're getting started, if you are looking for a scene that's maybe a little more forgiving, a lot of aspects here allow you for that freedom and a lot of expression. You can make mistakes in the small details and even in the larger shapes, and it's no big deal. If you want to learn more about how to paint like this, how to let go, enjoy the process, enjoy the painting, be sure to check out my frustration-free watercolor course. The link is always in the description box below. I am working on a follow-up course on realism that's going to be sweet. But until then, you have the frustration-free watercolor course, which will show you all of that. Letting go, enjoying the process, being more expressive, and getting the techniques down for getting a somewhat realistic result or a result that will satisfy you, which is the most important thing. Thank you so much. Leave a like, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts. I will see you again real soon.